everybody, Peter from PK Data. Today I'm going to show you how to use AIM's RS3 to communicate with your AIM SOlo2 standalone laptimer. Now this is the SOlo2, not the DL. The DL and the SOlo2 have different communication protocols. They have different tabs, they have different windows, and we'll be going over that in a separate video. You'll be able to find that on our website, and when it's done I'll cross-post it by putting it in the More tab down below. There are also a series of buttons across the front here, right here. Those are also used to the setup. That will be a separate video. Otherwise, this one video is going to be about 45 minutes long, and nobody got time for that. So today we're going to use the RS3, the RS3 software, and show you how to communicate with the SOlo2. We'll go through every button, every tab, every item. There are a few of them that I'm going to just cover quickly, and then we'll leave them for a later video because they take quite a bit more, and we're going to need more time for that. Like, for instance, the Tracks tab and the Download tab when we get to it. They'll be separate videos, and they'll be listed down below. So after you watch this one, if you want to go watch those, you'll be able to get right to them. So we'll get started. First thing is open RS3 from AIM. We showed you how to download that and how to customize it for yourself in a previous video. You should have that done by now. You can see on my screen, I have our logo up on the screen. Yours is probably white, which has some technical drawings in the background. Excuse me. And turn on your SOlo2 so that it is active. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the Configurations tab, and you'll see that's over here on the upper left-hand side corner of your screen. Click on the little gear icon, and you're going to get something similar to what I have, but you're not going to have all of these configurations here on the right side, and you're not going to have all of these folders here either. I set those up because I set up a lot of different devices for a lot of different people, and I need to quickly be able to get those configurations into a device. For the SOlo2, there are no configurations, so we won't be saving anything. They're going to basically stay blank just like they are now. Now what we've got to do is communicate with the device. So we'll go to the upper right-hand corner of the screen and click on the Wi-Fi icon. Go down to the device, which I've already named, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment, the PK Data SOlo2. You'll notice it says AIM SOlo2 and then the serial number of the unit and then the name that I input. So we'll click on that, and we'll give it a minute to communicate. And you'll see it pops up here under Connected Devices. And then when I click on the device, it's going to go out, reach out, say hello, shake hands, and it'll say PC connection on the screen. So we can just set that aside for the moment. That's what you should be looking at. Now, some of the newer units out there are going to be missing some channels. And what they're missing is here the acceleration channels, inline, lateral, and vertical acceleration. And they're also missing roll rate, pitch rate, and yaw rate. Those come from what's called the IMU, or Inertial Measurement Unit. They're, because of the chip shortage, AIM has had difficulty finding a source for those. So what they did was they decided to go ahead and release the SOlo2s and the 2DLs without the IMU. That's something you're going to want to have later on, and it's real simple. If you contact AIM and give them your name, your email, your phone number, and the serial number of your unit, they'll add it in later on when it becomes available. I'll do a little video on how to do that, but don't panic if yours doesn't have it. It just means you have a newer unit where they had to release it without it, and they're going to install it free of charge. They'll even send you a shipping label, so it won't cost you a thing. But the choices were release the units without the IMU, or don't release any units at all and have nothing to sell. So it was a good decision, I think, but don't panic if yours is missing. If it just says internal battery here, it just means you've got a newer one, and we'll just wait until they become available. So this first tab is what pops up. This is the Live Measures tab. What we're looking at here is what the unit is actually measuring. And what I'll do is I'll move this around, and you can see I'm moving it in my hand, and the numbers on the screen are changing. And that's because in real time, the SOlo2 is reporting back to my laptop through the Wi-Fi what it's actually experiencing. And this is important because there's a few things we got to do on this screen. So for the most part, with this screen, you're not going to use a lot of it. So I'll just go through quickly the buttons that we're not going to use, and then I'll show you the ones that we do. So the ones that you're really not going to use much is the 1, 2, 3 here. What that does is that stops and starts. So you notice as I turned the unit, if I click the 1, 2, 3, it freezes the screen, click it again, and it unfreezes the screen. Not something you need with the Solo2, but for other more advanced loggers that becomes important because you may want to freeze some information. The second tab is Channel Order, where you can sort by configuration, alphabetically, or channel type. At the moment, this is channel type. That's what it defaults to. If you go by configuration, it simply sorts it by what the thing is recording. Alphabetically, that should be self-explanatory, or back to channel type. One quick thing though, you'll see the button here that has the arrow up and down, and then it says, if you can see it on your screen, it'll say CHTY for channel type. You're going to see that very same button later on in the RS2 3 analysis. AIM uses that button, that square box with the arrow up and down, anytime you're allowed to change the order of something. So keep that in mind. You'll probably see it later in RS2 3 analysis. I'm going to skip over this button for a moment. That is the auto calibrations. Millivolts, it isn't going to change anything for us, but again, if you've got external sensors and you need to know the voltage feedback from the sensor, you can click on that and it'll give you the actual voltage. On the right-hand side, I've got to move me for just a moment. On the right-hand side here, this is to start logging and to stop logging, and this one will flash the screen. So we'll do the flash screen first. If I click on that, then what happens is the Solo2 is simply going to cycle through all of the colors that it has available. Some of the other ones will flash a little bit different. And when it's done, it's going to land back on the color that we started with, which was blue. And looks like we're back. Not quite yet. One more. And we're back. So those are all the colors available. I'll show you how to change those in a moment. But that's what that button does. And this one with the big red dot, this is start and stop recording. So right now this is recording. I'll just move it around so it'll get some data, and then I'll click it again, and it'll stop recording. So that's how you can force the unit to begin recording and then stop recording if you want to test it like we just did here on the bench. You'll see in a minute when we get to it that there will be a one lap data in there that has just a little bit of wiggle data is all it has in it. So for the most part, those 5 buttons, you're probably never going to touch them. But I do want to show you what they are because there really isn't a lot of information on what they are, how they work. The one that you are going to use, however, though, is this one here, the third button with the target. Click to perform the auto calibration. So we're going to click on that. And you'll notice that when I pick up the unit and move it around, that the numbers all change. I'm going to try to hold it very still. And you'll see that the numbers are not all zeros, okay? But if I click auto calibrate, now they're all going to go to 0 if I can hold it still enough, with the exception of vertical acceleration. But there's something I want you to notice. I'll get to that in just a moment. If I set it back down on the table, they will stabilize. You'll see that the numbers are also, again, they've changed quite a bit. So what you need to do, after you mount this unit on your motorcycle and it's in the positions, for instance, in front of you where you can see it, and you've got it stable on the motorcycle, it's connected to its mount, turn it on. And then at this point, when the bike is still in vertical, so for instance, on the rear stand on your garage floor is a perfect place to do it. Just click auto calibrate, okay? I'm going to set this down and do it again because I want to show you what it's supposed to look like. So when it's all still, it's on your motorcycle and it's in position on the, up on your dash or on the mount, wherever you want it. This is what you should see after auto calibration. You'll notice that all of the values are 0 or pretty damn close to 0. With the exception of one, and that is vertical acceleration, and it's a -1. And the reason is because the IMU is experiencing the pull of gravity. As human beings, we don't actually feel the force of gravity. What we feel is the result of the force of gravity, which is weight. We can't feel gravity accelerating us down onto the planet. All we feel is the result of that is that whatever you weigh, in my case, 240 pounds. But the IMU feels that, and you need to zero this gyro, the IMU, you need to have that zeroed in the position when the bike is vertical and on the rear stand and on a fairly level surface. That way it will understand what left, right, up, down, back, forth is, etc. So this is something that's important. It needs to be done. I would do it, check it often, like once every outing, say every weekend. Anytime that you remove the unit from the mount and put it back on, you've got to go back here and just click auto calibrate real quick and you're good to go. If you haven't done it yet, next time you're out working on your motorcycle, bring your laptop with you, go to the Live Measures tab, Click on the Auto Calibrate button. That'll bring you to this screen. Click on Auto Calibrate All, like we just did, and everything will go to pretty much 0. 0.1's okay, and negative 0.1's fine. But you'll see what will happen. If I just take this now, and what I'm going to do is it was sitting flat, I'm going to take and set it down this way. You can't see it, but I've just set it on its head. And you'll notice that inline acceleration is now at 0.96, and vertical went from -1 to -0.04. And then the others have changed a little as well. So pitch, roll, and yaw won't change because it's not currently moving. That comes off a gyro. But the accelerations come off an IMU, and we've changed the orientation from flat to this, and it changed the numbers dramatically. So make sure, again, that you auto-calibrate it, because that way your lean angle data will make sense, your acceleration data will make sense later on. So when you're done with that, just click Exit, okay? That's the first tab. The next tab, once you've done that, like I said, you're probably not going to go back to it other than to check that calibration, because it does change over time when things wiggle and move. Every once in a while, I would say every race weekend or every track day, before you start, put it on the rear stand, check your auto calibration, and you're good to go. The next tab I want to go over with you guys is the Wi-Fi and Properties tab right here. So this is where we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, we're going to name the device. You see right here at the top of the screen, I've called it PK Data Solo2 because I have some Solo2s, some Solo DLs, etc. It identifies them as mine. And you'll notice that that name will come up right here in the middle of the screen, right here. And it also came up, you saw that when we went to connect to Wi-Fi, that the name came up as well. Without that, all you're going to see is the AIM SOlo2-015562. So your choices are name your unit or memorize your serial number. So go ahead and name the device. When I set these up for my customers, I just put their name in it. So that way in the paddock, when I go to look for their device, the Wi-Fi signal might collect 20 of these things. It's easiest just to either name somebody's nickname or their proper name, last name, or something like that, so that you can easily find your device. So your Wi-Fi power mode should be on auto. Your access point, your Wi-Fi mode, I'm sorry, should be on access point, and Wi-Fi password. So data at high levels is sacred, and everybody will have a password so that they don't steal each other's data. Around the paddock for club racing and track day, probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you if you don't have a password is I may change your device name to something that's totally inappropriate, and if I know you well enough, it might even get you arrested. But beyond that, you don't need a Wi-Fi password unless you want to protect your data. One thing it will do, once you've entered a password and then you've signed on, the device and the laptop will be tied together, and just like so many of the other programs we use, it will remember your password, so it won't ask you for one. But if you try to log in from another device that it hasn't seen before, it will ask you for your password. So we ran into this with a customer. We thought it wasn't working, went back to AIM. They explained, no, that's the way it works. Their new system, their new firmware is once they're sort of paired together, once the laptop and the Wi-Fi know each other, they don't ask for the password anymore. But if a second laptop comes in and tries to sign on, you'll need your password. And then under Properties, where it says racer name, vehicle name or number, championship, and venue type, go ahead and fill in those first three. Put in your name, put in your vehicle. I call my bike the Kraken, or you could just call it SV650. Put something in there because you may have multiple bikes, or as you changed bikes over the years, you'll bring the device with you. That helps your sort order. And just keep it the same so that you're not changing it every week to a new name, or it's going to be really difficult to look at your data over time. And then championship. So championships and venue, just a quick explanation. What AIM calls a championship, we call a series. Or it might even be a track day organization. So under the championship here, I've got NEMR. When we go to Tony's track day, I put in TTD. And that way, when I'm looking at groups of data, I can search it that way. I can look for all of the NEMR data, or all of the NEMR data on a particular day, date, time, and we'll get into that on the download tab in detail. But whatever your organization you're racing with or riding with, put that number into your championship. And venue type is what we call an outing. So the three basic types that we have practice sessions, we have race sessions, and in professional racing, there are also qualifiers. So I'll show you on one of the other tabs, again on the download tab. When we get to that video, we'll get into it in detail, although we'll cover it quickly in a minute. That is how you keep track of whether you're in practice 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., or a race or qualifying. And you'll see that this is a drop-down list on the ones that I've activated. So you can choose from any one of these. I start each day with practice 1 because the first time I go out, it's P1. All right, so then after you're done with that, you make sure that once you've got everything where you want it, your device name, your Wi-Fi password if you're going to use it, your name, your vehicle, your championship, and venue type, you must transmit that to the device. And to do it, right here, you just click on the transmit button. You'll see it'll take a moment, and we'll watch here. It'll come up on the screen. And when it's done, everything goes back to white, and you're good to go. So if you have just changed your name, real quick, down here, you've changed the device name. You're going to have to log in again because that is also the Wi-Fi name. You'll see that the Wi-Fi network name has changed from just the AIM SOlo2 your serial number, and it adds the dash PK Data Solo2. So technically that is a new Wi-Fi network as far as the devices are concerned, and you're going to have to sign it again. If you entered the password, you'll have to enter your password, and then once that's done, from here on out, you'll just click on the Wi-Fi, click on your device, and it'll come right up. So that's your Wi-Fi and Properties tab and how to handle it, how to name your device. And then with the racer name, vehicle number, and championship, you put that in there so that you don't have to fill it out later on when we get to download. So the next tab I want you to look at is Settings. Okay, settings is basically how the thing's going to handle the time date format. And the best thing to do, I found, is click here by GPS track. And that's the easiest way. You can put it in manually, you can sync it with your PC, but if you do GPS track, then when you turn on your Solo 2 and you go out to practice or to race, it will automatically sync the day, date, and time with what it gets from the GPS, and that's the best way to handle it. Then especially for racers where you're on close to a time zone change, and sometimes you're an hour ahead, and other times you're an hour behind. Then the Solo 2 will keep track of that. It'll always be the time at the racetrack that you're on. It's the easiest way. The backlight color, we showed them flashing. I have this on blue at the moment simply because that is the easiest color to see when I hold it up to the camera like that. I have found the green color is the best color for viewing outside. So to change that to green, click on the drop down, go to green, and then again up to transmit, and blink, we got green. As you can see, the numbers have pretty much disappeared. So we're going to go back to blue, and then transmit, and it's blue again, and now you guys can see the numbers. Okay, and night vision is what turns the display on and off the color. So if I click night vision and I go to off and transmit, the blue will disappear. And if we go back to on and click transmit, the blue comes back on, and that is your settings tab. So there we set the time and date, the format you want to use. I always use month, day, year. If you're watching this overseas, you may want to go day, month, year. And then the time format, we use 12-hour. If you like 24-hour, you can select that. And then GPS by track. And of course, the fourth one here shows you exactly how it's going to display. Choose your backlight color, and on and off toggles the backlight color on and off. And that is your settings tab. The next tab that we'll look at is the logo tab. So here is where you can, this is where you can change the startup screen from just the AIM logo to your own, and this is the one that I use. It's PK Data logo, so people know I've worked on the bike. It's that whole marketing thing. And all you do is click select. It'll come up with your folder, and I'll just cancel out of this. You choose your folder. It puts it in here, and of course, once you're done, you've got to hit transmit, and it will transmit that information. And you'll see, I'm quick enough there, it popped right up, and now it's gone. So I'll do that again if I go to transmit, click transmit, and you'll see it pop right up on the startup. That is now the logo for my startup screen. Kind of cool that you can have your own. It's sort of a bitmap, but it works really well. And it's kind of cool, then you know it's your device as well. The other buttons, of course, show on device will actually just show it instead of transmitting. Again, if I click show on device, it'll show up on the device. If I say use AIM logo, it'll choose the original logo that it came with. And if I click receive, it'll download what is already in there. So say you get one with my logo on it. If you click receive, you can then save it, put your own, and then switch back to the one it came with later on. The buttons at the bottom, black background, clear, and save. Again, that's how you toggle how you're going to set up the look. And the threshold you see as I move this, actually won't because it's not the one that's already transmitted, but that will actually make it like lighter and darker. And that's how that works. So that's the logo. That's how you get your own cool little picture of you. It doesn't take a lot of memory. So if you've got a big picture of you with a ton of pixels, it's not going to work. You'll have to save it in a different format. And the other tab we'll look at real quick, so that's your logo tab, and again, how to handle all of that. Next, we'll look at the firmware tab. So the firmware is going to tell us, of course, all the things that just kind of like the help button on all of the other software that we work, the serial ID, the hardware, booter version, and firmware release. This one is for 2.40.07. There's another update. The 07 for the Solo 2 and the 2DL is really all you need. The later ones pertain more to handling the SmartyCam, but if you want to update to the latest one, you go right ahead, and it's real easy to do. We go over here to firmware updates, and this brings us to a tab where everything that is checked off here, RS3 wants to import the latest versions to my laptop, and then from there you would upload the version to your device. Now you'll see where it says on the web, everything has a dash, and that's because I'm using the Wi-Fi to communicate with the Solo 2. So it couldn't go out to the internet to see what's available. So we're just going to back out of this. But if you've got the version that we had there, we'll go back to the configuration screen. Okay, if you've got version 024007, you're fine. If you want to go to the later versions, before you'll have to disconnect from the device, go to firmware updates, download the new software firmware, and you can uncheck everything except for the one that says here. The easy way I found is click them all and then unclick them all under name, and you can just scroll down and just click Solo 2 because that's all you need. Or if you need to update RStudio 3, you can click those too. So instead of updating firmware and software for devices you don't have and you'll never need, you can just leave them blank and just update those two. After you've done that, go back to communicating with the device like we showed you from the Wi-Fi tab. And then from the configurations tab, then you can go to click firmware once it has the latest updates. Then it will go ahead and communicate with your device and just follow the prompts. It's a couple of clicks real quick and you're fine. So mine's not doing it because it knows it has the latest update. So they're kind of smart that way. So the last two tabs that we have here, tracks. So tracks, what it's doing now is it's looking inside the device in here, and it's saying, what do you have for a bunch of tracks in there? And what I did was, when you first get these devices, there's a ton of them in there. I think they're up to 5,500 tracks or something like that worldwide. And every one of them takes up a little bit of memory. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I don't like to have to scroll through all those and find them if I need them later on. So what I did was I reduced it down to one folder of about 20 tracks. And those are the ones that are on the East Coast that myself and my customers are most likely to go to. I've loaded those. We're all on the same track map. We can easily share data now, and I just put these in here. So I'll cover more in detail how to handle tracks because there's a lot of detail work that has to be done. But basically, if you scroll through the list that you have and you see the the tracks that you're likely to go to, then you're fine. You don't have to do a thing. If you want to pare it down later on and learn how to manage tracks a little better, I'll have another video on the tracks tab, both in RS3 and how to communicate with the device and send and receive tracks, etc. in another video. That video itself is going to be probably close to an hour long. Again, there's a lot of detail work, creating folders and sorting and whatnot. Then we'll get into that later. So for now, just make sure that when you click on your device, under Connected Devices, and you click on the Tracks tab. Somewhere in there, make sure that you have the track that you go to. And if you've got their list of tracks, 5,500, it's very unlikely that you don't have a track in there. If you don't, there is a process to actually create your own. Like, say, for instance, you have a motocross track behind your house, and obviously that wouldn't be loaded into an AIM device. Of course, you can use them on motocross bikes as well. So there's a way to make a track map, and pretty much what these maps do is they're just for establishing where you are on the planet and where start-finish line is. And the tracks that you use in RS3 analysis are a whole different set of tracks and a whole different set of divisions. And again, it will be a whole nother video series just on that. So just make sure for now that what you're looking at here on the screen, when you click on your device and you click on the Tracks tab, just make sure that your tracks are in there. If you want to click off a bunch of them and delete them, go ahead. You won't hurt anything. Just remember that you've got to refresh and send and transmit, etc. So that's your Tracks tab. Just make sure your tracks are somewhere on this list here on the right-hand side, and you're good to go. The last tab that we haven't looked at yet is the Download tab. Okay, now the Download tab is the one that you're going to use most of the time when you interact with your device, with your Solo2. So at this point, you've done all the setup work, you've transmitted everything as you click it off, and make sure, of course, that you transmit everything as you make the changes. And now what we're looking at is there's actually some data in here. So if you remember when we started and we communicated, and the first thing we looked at was live measures, I said that there would be a 1 lap, which is what this number 1 means over here, bit of data from today at 3:20 p.m. from me wiggling the thing around because we forced it to start recording and then stop. So we actually have a bit of new data from today. Now it doesn't, of course, mean anything, but we told it to record it, so it did, and it saved that, and boom, there it is, shows up in our list. So what we also have, though, are some sessions here from other days, right? And you can click on the arrows and you can open and close the entire blocks of days here. And we'll get into details about how to download, but typically what you're going to see is this. Your latest session from today that you have not yet downloaded will pop up. Now notice that the box here is not checked. And the reason for that is for it's coming from some of the settings that we have over here in the gear icon on the far right hand side. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go to settings, okay? And that's going to bring up a box that I want you to look at because this is important that you have this set up. So this tab is sort of operating on your laptop. This doesn't send anything to the device. This is how your laptop or your desktop is going to handle the downloads. The first tab that comes up here is the Download Data tab. And make sure that you have this set up correctly. And again, we'll go over this in detail, but basically here is where the data is going to go. It's going to go to my C drive, AIM Sport 2, Race Studio 3 user data. This is the order that I have chosen for actually storing the data in the folders. And then under the File Name tab, I use the same structure and have it add the logged file name because what it does is it adds a time date stamp. So that way there can't be any duplicates. And again, you'll see it across up here, how I have date and time, racer, track, championship, vehicle, venue, type, and log file name. That's how it'll actually come up. And I find that works best. We'll go over this in detail in how to handle download. I'll have a separate video on that. But quick overview for most of you, if you just click off date, time, racer, and track, and vehicle. That's probably enough, and maybe championship too. Because most of you will remember what date you're at. I would put championship in there because you'll also remember, gee, was it a track day with this organization or was it a race with that organization? And it'll help you find your data later on. The more boxes you have checked off, the more granular the search is going to be able to be. So instead of just looking for all the data on a certain date, you're looking for a date, you're looking for a racer, you're looking for a specific track, the championship, the vehicle, the venue type. So it just helps me where I work across so many different people, motorcycles, loggers, etc., that the more finite I have that sort, the easier it is for me to find things. Whereas for most of you, it's just yourself and your laptop. You can have sort of a folder with just a lot of stuff in it. You don't need to have it organized quite that finite the way that I did. One thing I would do, though, while we're here is copy downloaded data to another folder. I've got it set up to go to my G drive, and it does two things for me. One is it creates an automatic backup, so if something happens to my laptop, I have all the data already downloaded. And the second thing is when I get home and I'm going to use my big giant desktop with a big screen to analyze the data, then I don't have to put it on the thumb drive, save it, export it, put it into the computer. All I do is I open up the RS3 on my desktop and then just go pull the data and import it in from my Google Drive. So I would have it checked off to copy and download your data, and then send it to like a Google Drive, or you can send it to any of the Microsoft, any place where you've got it online, like a OneDrive or whatever you've got. Google's real popular, obviously OneDrive, Dropbox, etc., anywhere you want it to go. Under the Advanced tab, real quick. So, two things I've got checked off: auto select downloadable files and skip selection of only one lap session. So you notice when we pulled up this data here in the back, this box is not checked, and the reason is because over here there's only one lap. So what one lap of data usually means is that the unit started to log, but you didn't go past start finish multiple times, and often that's you, say, driving to tech inspection or going across the paddock or something like that. So like, for instance, if you came in and you shut your bike off, you start it back up and then go back to your pit, it would record from when you turned it back on until you got to your pit, but that's not really data, that's just you going back to the pits. So I've just set it to ignore those, and it won't download it so that it doesn't clog up. My files and all the memories. I don't have to sort through that later on. It will only check off that the ones that have multiple laps, 2 or more. The other ones here you can get, don't worry about the additional exported. These actually I leave unchecked. And I only use the RS3 analysis format. And that's because going forward we're only using RS3. So I'll get into more detail about venue types and about how to handle this in a video specifically about downloads, but that's how you handle your download tab. So if we look at what you would see, we'll close this. So normally you'll see something like, and that's down to just one, let me try another one. So here we go. Down the bottom here you'll see this is what happens. It auto checks the session with 5 laps. It auto checks the session with 11 laps, and also the session with 9 laps. But the 2 that only have 1 lap remain unchecked. So if I tell it now go ahead and download, it'll just download those 3 sessions that have multiple laps, and the ones that have 2, which is probably just me starting the bike and warming it up, or going to tech, something like that, it just ignore those. They stay in the device, right? After you download, they all stay here. And let me show you, I'm going to expand this because I don't know where it's going to pop up. I expand all of those. Let's go auto hide already downloaded. And you'll see what happens is all of a sudden you see a bunch here that say already downloaded, already downloaded, already downloaded. So the auto hide hides those features. They're still in here. So if something happened to my laptop, if something happened to my Google Drive, as long as I haven't actually deleted the deleted the memory out of here, then those are still there. So we click hide download, and it just makes the ones that have already been downloaded disappear just visually. It's just cleaner and neater. And then the other thing is where you've got all these here that have just 1 lap, if you just click on the box here, you can highlight all of those and then just delete all your 1 lap sessions later on real easy. So that's sort of an overview of the download tab. And again, this is the tab you're going to use the most when you communicate with your device, and it's the one that you want to become most familiar with. And again, we'll have the video on download later on, and you guys can go watch that and have a look. We'll go into great detail about how to handle all of this properly. So that is what you can do now with RStudio 3 and communicating wirelessly, with your device. There's more setup to be done, especially on the Solo 2 that we've been working with these buttons down the bottom here. And we'll do another video with just those buttons and how to handle screens and how to set up the display of the information. And some of the things we did here on the computer can be done as well with the buttons, and there's a lot more that you cannot do on your laptop that you have to do with the buttons that we'll get to in the next video. So hopefully this has been informative. You guys now have an idea of what you need to do to communicate with your SOlo2. You've been able to get your RStudio 3 downloaded and set up, and now you see how at least the first step goes in dealing with your SOlo2 device. Hope it's been informative. You guys can leave comments down below. We appreciate the feedback, positive, negative, and hopefully constructive. And so we'll see you on the next video. And always remember, data is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Power is money, and money is times.